Chapter 17, Part 2 of the Book of Camping and Woodcraft, a guidebook for those who travel in the wilderness. The Book of Camping and Woodcraft, a guidebook for those who travel in the wilderness, by Horace Kephart. Chapter 17, Part 2. Potherbs and Salads. All of the plants hitherto mentioned are native to the regions described. In the following list will be found many that are introduced weeds, but a considerable proportion of these foundlings may now be seen in clearings and old burnt tracts in the woods, far from regular settlements. Directions for cooking greens are given in the chapter on Camp Cookery. Adder's tongue, yellow. Dog's tooth, violet. Erythronium americanum. Moist woods and thickets. Nova Scotia to Minnesota, south to Florida, Missouri, Arkansas. March to May. Sometimes used for greens. Bean, wild kidney. Phaseolus polystachys (P. perennis). Thickets. Canada to Florida, west to Minnesota, Nebraska, Louisiana. July to September. Was used as a food by the Indians. The Apaches eat it either green or dried. Bellwort, Uvularia perfoliata. Moist woods and thickets, Quebec and Ontario to Florida and Mississippi, May to June. The roots of this and other species of Uvularia are edible when cooked, and the young shoots are a good substitute for asparagus (porcher). Brook lime, American. Veronica americana. Brooks and swamps. Anticosti to Alaska, south to Pennsylvania, Nebraska, New Mexico, California. April to September. A salad plant equal to the watercress, delightful in flavor, healthful, antiscorbutic. Scientific American. Burdock, great. Cocklebur. Arctium lapa. Waste places. New Brunswick to southern New York, and locally in the interior. Not nearly so widely distributed as the smaller common burdock (A-). July to October. A naturalized weed, so rank in appearance and odor that nothing but stark necessity could have driven people to experiment with it as a vegetable. Yet, like the skunk cabbage, it is capable of being turned to good account. In spring, the tender shoots, when peeled, can be eaten raw like radishes, or with vinegar can be used as a salad. The stalks, cut before the flowers open and stripped of their rind, form a delicate vegetable when boiled, similar in flavor to asparagus. The raw root has medicinal properties, but the Japanese eat the cooked root, preparing it as follows. The skin is scraped or peeled off, and the roots sliced in long strips, or cut into pieces about 2 inches long, and boiled with salt and pepper, or with soy, to impart flavor. Or the boiled root is mashed, made into cakes, and fried like oyster plant. Charlock, wild mustard. Brassica arvensis (B. synapistrum). Fields and waste places. Naturalized everywhere. May to November. Extensively used as a potherb. Aids digestion. Chickweed, Alsine media (Stellaria M.). Waste places, meadows, and woods. Naturalized, common everywhere. January to December. Used like spinach and quite as good. Chicory, wild succory. Chicorium intybus. Roadsides, fields, and waste places. Nova Scotia to Minnesota, south to North Carolina and Missouri, July to October. All parts of the plant are wholesome. The young leaves make a good salad, or may be cooked as a pot herb like dandelion. The root, ground and roasted, is used as an adulterant of coffee. Clover, Trifolium, many species. The coast Indians of California use clover as a food. The fresh leaves and stems are used before flowering. Deserves test as a salad herb with vinegar and salt. Comfrey, Symphytum officinale. Waste places, Newfoundland to Minnesota, south to Maryland. Naturalized, June to August. Makes good greens when gathered young. How pea, China bean. Vigna sinensis. Escaped from cultivation. Missouri to Texas and Georgia, July to September. The seeds are edible. Cress, rocket, yellow rocket, bitter cress. Barbaria barbaria (B. vulgaris). Fields and waste places. Naturalized. Labrador to Virginia and locally in the interior. Also on Pacific coast. April to June. The young tender leaves make a fair salad, but inferior to the watercress. Cress, water. Rhopyra nasturtium (Nasturtium officinale). Brooks and other streams. Nova Scotia to Manitoba, south to Virginia and Missouri. Naturalized from Europe. April to November. A well-known salad herb. The leaves and stems are eaten raw with salt, as a relish, or mixed as a salad. Cress, winter. Scurvy grass. Barbaria praecox. Waste places, naturalized. Southern New York, Pennsylvania, and southward. April to June. Highly esteemed as a winter salad and pot herb, sometimes cultivated. Crinkle root. Two-leaved toothwort. Dentaria diphylla. Rich woods and meadows. Nova Scotia to Minnesota, south to South Carolina and Kentucky. May. The root stalks are crisp and fleshy, with a spicy flavor like watercress. Eaten with salt like celery. Crowfoot, celery-leaved or ditch. Ranunculus scleratus. Swamps and wet ditches, New Brunswick to Florida. Abundant along the coast, and locally westward to Minnesota. April to August. Porcher cites this as a good example of the destruction of acrid and poisonous juices by heating. The fresh juice is so caustic that it will raise a blister, and 2 drops taken internally may excite fatal inflammation. Yet the boiled or baked root, he said, is edible. When cleansed, scraped, and pounded, and the pulp soaked in a considerable quantity of water, a white sediment is deposited, which, when washed and dried, is a real starch. Cuckoo flower. Meadow bittercress. Cardamine pratensis. Wet meadows and swamps. Labrador to northern New Jersey, west to Minnesota and British Columbia. April to May. Has a pungent savor and is used like watercress. Occasionally cultivated as a salad plant. Dandelion. Taraxacum taraxacum. T. officinale. Fields and waste places everywhere. Naturalized. January to December. Common pot herb, also blanched for salad. In boiling, change the water 2 or 3 times. Dock, curled. Rumex crispus. Fields and waste places everywhere. Naturalized. June to August. The young leaves make good pot herbs. The plant produces an abundance of seeds, which Indians grind into flour for bread or mush. Ferns, many species. The young stems of ferns, gathered before they are covered with down, and before the leaves have uncurled, are tender, and when boiled like asparagus are delicious. The rootstocks of ferns are starchy, and after being baked resemble the dough of wheat. Their flavor is not very pleasant, but they are by no means to be despised by a hungry man. Fettucus, corn salad. Valerianella locusta. Waste places, New York to Virginia and Louisiana. Naturalized. April to July. Cultivated for salad and as a pot herb. The young leaves are very tender. Flag, cattail. Typha latifolia. Marshes. Throughout North America except in the extreme north. June to July. The flowering ends are very tender in the spring, and are eaten raw, or when boiled in water make a good soup. The root is eaten as a salad. Quote, the Cossacks of the Don peel off the outer cuticle of the stalk, and eat raw the tender white part of the stem extending about 18 inches from the root. It has a somewhat insipid but pleasant and cooling taste. End quote. Garlic, mild or meadow. Allium canadense. Moist meadows and thickets. Maine to Minnesota, south to Florida, Louisiana, Arkansas. May to June. A good substitute for garlic. Quote, the top bulbs are superior to the common onion for pickling. End quote. Ginseng, dwarf. Groundnut. Panax trifolium (Aurelia trifolia). Moist woods and thickets. Nova Scotia to Georgia, west to Minnesota, Iowa, Illinois. April to June. The tubers are edible and pungent. Hornwort. Doringa canadensis (Cryptotaenia C.). Woods. New Brunswick to Minnesota, south to Georgia and Texas. June to July. In the spring this is a wholesome green, used in soups, etc., like chervil. Hop. Cannabis sativa. Waste places. New Brunswick to Minnesota, south to North Carolina, Tennessee, Kansas. Naturalized. July to September. Used for yeast. In Belgium, the young shoots of the plant, just as they emerge from the ground, are used as asparagus. Indian cucumber. Mediola virginiana. Rich, damp woods and thickets. Nova Scotia to Minnesota, south to Florida and Tennessee. May to June. The common name alludes to the succulent, horizontal, white, tuberous root, which tastes like cucumber, and was in all probability relished by the Indians. Matthews. Jerusalem artichoke. Canada potato. Girasol. Topinambur. Helianthus tuberosus. Moist soil. New Brunswick to northwest Tennessee, south to Georgia and Arkansas. Often occurs along roadsides in the east, a relic of cultivation by the aborigines. Now cultivated and for sale in our markets. The tubers are large and edible, either raw or cooked, tasting somewhat like celery root. They are eaten as vegetables, and are also pickled. Lady's thumb. English smartweed. Polygonum persicaria. Waste places throughout the continent except extreme north. Naturalized, often an abundant weed. June to September. Used as an early salad plant in the southern mountains. Lamb's quarters. White pigweed. Chenopodium album. Waste places. Range universal like the above. Naturalized. June to September. A fine summer green and pot herb. Tender and succulent. Should be boiled about 20 minutes, the first water being thrown away owing to its bad taste. The small seeds, which are not unpleasant when eaten raw, may be dried, ground, and made into cakes or gruel. They resemble buckwheat in color and taste, and are equally nutritious. Lettuce. Spanish, Indian or miner's lettuce. Claytonia perfoliata. Native of Pacific coast but spreading eastward. April to May. The whole plant is eaten by western Indians and by whites. In a raw state makes an excellent salad, also cooked with salt and pepper, as greens. Lupine, wild pea. Lupinus perennis. Dry sandy soil. Maine to Minnesota, south to Florida, Missouri, Louisiana. May to June. Edible, cooked like domestic peas. Mallow, marsh. Athea officinalis. Salt marshes. Massachusetts to New Jersey, summer. The thick, very mucilaginous root has familiar use as a confection, also used in medicine as a demulcent. May be eaten raw. Mallow, whorled or curled. Malva articulata. M. crispa. Waste places. Vermont. Naturalized. Summer. A good pot herb. Marigold, marsh. Meadowgowan. Cowslip. Caltha palustris. Swamps and meadows. Newfoundland to South Carolina, west through Canada to the Rocky Mountains, and south to Iowa. April to June. Used as a spring vegetable, the young plant being thoroughly boiled for greens. The flower bulbs are sometimes pickled as a substitute for capers. Beware of mistaking for this plant the poisonous white hellebore (Veratrum viride). Meadow beauty. Deer grass. Rexia virginica. Sandy swamps. Maine to Florida, west to north New York, Illinois, Missouri, Louisiana. July to September. The leaves have a sweetish yet acidulous taste. Make a good addition to a salad, and may be eaten with impunity. Milkweed. Asclepias syriaca. A. cornuti. Fields and waste places generally. June to August. Also other species. The young shoots in spring are a good substitute for asparagus. Calm says that a good brown sugar has been made by gathering the flowers while the dew was on them, expressing the dew and boiling it down. Mushrooms. The number of edible species is legion. It is not difficult to distinguish the poisonous ones when one has studied a good textbook, but no one should take chances with fungi until he has made such a study, and a few of the common species are deadly, and for some of them no remedy is known. A beginner would do well, perhaps, to avoid all of the genus Amanita. All mushrooms on the following list are of delicious flavour: Caprinus comatus, Hyphiloma appendiculatum, Tricholoma personatum, Boletus subaureus, Boletus bovinus, Boletus subsanguineus, Clavaria botrytis, Clavaria cinerea, Clavaria inequalis, Clavaria vermicularis, Clavaria pistolaris, Lactarius volumus, Lactarius deliciosus, Rusula altacea, Rusula virescens, Cantharellus cibarius, Marasmius oreades, Hydnium repandum, Hydnium caput medusae, Morchella esculenta, Morchella deliciosa. It would be well for every outer to learn the easily distinguished beefsteak fungus (Fistulina hepatica), and sulphur mushroom (Polyporus sulphureus), that grow from the trunks of old trees and stumps, as they are very common, very large, and very filling. Mustard, Brassica, several species. Fields and waste places, naturalized. The young leaves are used for greens. Nettle, Urtica dioica, and other species, also the sow thistle, Sonchus oleraceus. Fields and waste places. Should be gathered with gloves when the leaves are quite young and tender. A pleasant, nourishing, and mildly aperient pot herb, used with soups, salt meat, or as spinach. Adds a piquant taste to other greens. Largely used for such purposes in Europe. Nightshade, black, or garden, Solanum nigrum. Waste places, commonly in cultivated soil. Nova Scotia to northwest Tennessee, south to Florida and Texas, July to October. This plant is reputed to be poisonous, though not to the same degree as its relative from Europe, the woody nightshade or bittersweet (S. dulcamera). It is however used as a pot herb like spinach in some countries, and in China the young shoots and berries are eaten. Bessie reports that in the Mississippi Valley the little black berries are made into pies. Onion, wild, Allium, many species. Rich woods, moist meadows and thickets, banks and hillsides. Used like the domestic onions. Parsnip, cow, masterwort, Heracleum lanatum. Moist ground, Labrador to North Carolina and Missouri, Alaska to California, June to July. The tender leaf and flower stalks are sweet and very agreeably aromatic, and are therefore much sought after (by coast Indians), for green food in spring and early summer, before the flowers have expanded. In eating these the outer skin is rejected. Peppergrass, wild, Lepidium virginicum. Fields and along roadsides, Quebec to Minnesota, south to Florida and Mexico, May to November. Like the cultivated peppergrass, this is sometimes used as a winter or early spring salad, but it is much inferior to other cresses. The spicy pods are good seasoning for salads, soups, etc. Pigweed, rough, beetroot, Amaranthus retroflexus. Fields and waste places, throughout the continent except extreme north, naturalized, August to October. Related to the beet and spinach, and may be used for greens. Pigweed, slender, Kearless, Amaranthus hybridus (A. chlorostachys). A weed of the same range as the preceding, naturalized, August to October. Extensively used in the south, in early spring, as a salad plant under the name of "Kearless." Plantain, common, Plantago major. A naturalized weed of general range, like the preceding, May to September. used as early spring greens. Pleurisy root, Asclepias tuberosa. Dry fields, Maine to Minnesota, south to Florida, Texas, Arizona. June to September. The tender young shoots may be used like asparagus. The raw tuber is medicinal, but when boiled or baked it is edible. Pokeweed, Phytolacca decandra. A common weed east of the Mississippi and west of Texas, now cultivated in France, and the wild shoots are sold in our eastern markets. In early spring the young shoots and leaves make an excellent substitute for asparagus. The root is poisonous. This is destroyed by heat, and the raw juice of the old plant is an acrid purgative. The berries are harmless. Prickly pear, Opuntia. Several species. Dry, sandy soil. Along eastern coast and on western prairies and plains. The ripe fruit is eaten raw. The unripe fruit, if boiled 10 or 12 hours, becomes soft and resembles applesauce. When the leaves are roasted in hot ashes, the outer skin, with its thorns, is easily removed, leaving a slimy but sweet and succulent pulp, which sustains life. Should be gathered with tongs, which can be extemporized by bending a green stick in the middle and beating it over the fire. Primrose, evening, Onagra biennis (Enothera B.), usually in dry soil. Labrador to Florida, west to Rocky Mountains, June to October. Young sprigs are mucilaginous and can be eaten as salad. Roots have a nutty flavor, and are used in Europe either raw or stewed, like celery. Purslane, Pusley, Portulaca oleracea. Fields and waste places. A weed of almost worldwide distribution. Summer. This weed was used as a potherb by the Greeks and Romans, and is still so used in Europe. The young shoots should be gathered when from 2 to 5 inches long. May also be used as a salad or pickled. Taste somewhat like string beans, with a slight acid flavor. The seeds, ground to flour, have been used by Indians in the form of mush. Redbud, Circus canadensis. French Canadians use the acid flowers of this tree in salads. The buds and tender pods are pickled in vinegar. All may be fried in butter or made into fritters. Saxifrage, lettuce, Saxifraga micranthitifolia. In cold brooks. Appalachian mountains from Pennsylvania to North Carolina, May to June. Eaten by Carolina mountaineers as a salad under the name of "lettuce." Shepherd's purse, Bursa pastoris (Capsella B.). Fields and waste places everywhere. Naturalized. January to December. A good substitute for spinach. Delicious when blanched and served as a salad. Tastes somewhat like cabbage, but is more delicate. Skunk cabbage, Spathyma fetida (Symplocarpus F.). Swamps and wet soil. Throughout the east and west to Minnesota and Iowa. February to April. The root of this foul-smelling plant was baked or roasted by eastern Indians, to extract the juice, and used as a bread root. Doubtless they got the hint from the bear, who is very fond of this, one of the first green things to appear in spring. Solomon's seal, Polygonatum biflorum. Woods and thickets. New Brunswick to Michigan, south to Florida and West Virginia. April to July. Indians boiled the young shoots in spring and ate them, also dried the mature roots in fall, ground or pounded them and baked them into bread. The raw plant is medicinal. Sorrel, mountain, Oxyria digyna. Greenland to Alaska, south to White Mountains of New Hampshire, and in Rocky Mountains to Colorado, July to September. A pleasant addition to salads. Sorrel, sheep, Rumex acetosella. Dry fields and hillsides, throughout the continent except in extreme north. May to September. The leaves are very acid. Young shoots may be eaten as salad, also used as a seasoning for soups, etc. The European sorrels cultivated as salad plants are R. acetosa, R. scutatus, and sometimes R. patientia. Sorrel, white wood, Oxalis acetosella. Cold, damp woods. Nova Scotia to Manitoba, mountains of North Carolina and north shore of Lake Superior. May to July. Not related to the above. The pleasant acid taste of the leaves, when mixed with salads, imparts an agreeable refreshing flavour." The fresh plant, or a "lemonade" made from it, is very useful in scurvy, and makes a cooling drink for fevers. Should be used in moderation, as it contains binoxalate of potash, which is poisonous. Yields the druggist's "salt of lemons." Stork's bill, pin clover, Erodium sicutarium. Waste places and fields. Locally in the east, abundant in the west. April to September. Naturalized. The young plant is gathered by western Indians and eaten raw or cooked. Strawberry blight. Blightum capitatum (Chenopodium C.). Dry soil. Nova Scotia to Alaska, south to New Jersey, Illinois, Colorado, Utah, Nevada. June to August. Sometimes cultivated for greens. Used like spinach. Trillium, wake robin, Bethroot. Trillium erectum. Also T. undulatum and T. grandiflorum. Woods. Nova Scotia to Minnesota and south to Florida. April to June. The popular notion that these plants are poisonous is incorrect. They make good greens when cooked. Tuckahoe, Pachyma cocos. A subterranean fungus which grows on decaying vegetable matter, such as old roots. It is found in light loamy soils and in dry waste places, but not in very old fields or in woodlands. Outwardly it is woody, resembling a cocoanut or the bark of a hickory tree. The inside is a compact white fleshy mass, moist and yielding when fresh, but in drying it becomes very hard, cracking from within. It contains no starch, but is composed largely of pectose. The Indians made bread of it, and it is sometimes called Indian bread. For details, see an article by Professor J. H. Gore in Smithsonian Report, 1881, pages 687 to 701. Unicorn plant, Martinia louisiana (M. proboscidea). Waste places. Maine to New Jersey and North Carolina. Native in Mississippi Valley, from Iowa and Illinois southward. July to September. Cultivated in some places. The seed pods, while yet tender, make excellent pickles. The Apaches gather the half-ripe pods of a related species and use them for food. Vetch, milk. Astragalus, several species. Prairies. May to August. Used as food by the Indians. The pea is hulled and boiled. Violet, early blue. Viola palmata. Dry soil, mostly in woods. Maine to Minnesota, south to Georgia and Arkansas. April to May. The plant is very mucilaginous, and is employed by negroes for thickening soup, under the name of wild okra (porcher). Waterleaf, Hydrophyllum virginicum. Woods. Quebec to Alaska, south to South Carolina, Kansas, Washington. May to August. Furnishes good greens. Reappears after being picked off, and does not become woody for a long time. Wild fruits. It would extend this chapter beyond reasonable limits if I were to give details of all the wild fruits native to the region here considered. As fruits may be eaten raw, or require no special treatment in cooking, a mere list of them with the time of ripening must suffice. Carolina buckthorn, Rhamnus carolinea. September. Woolly-leaved buckthorn, Boomlia languinosa. June to July. Buffalo berry, Lepargyria argentea. July to August. American barberry, Berberis canadensis. August to September. Common barberry, Berberis vulgaris. September. Naturalized. Bailey's blackberry, Rubus baileyanus. Bristly blackberry, R. setosus. Dewberry, R. canadensis. June to July. High bush blackberry, R. villosus. July to August. Hispid blackberry, R. hispidus. August. Low bush blackberry, R. trivialis. Millspaw's blackberry, R. millspawii. August to September. Mountain blackberry, R. alleghaniensis. August to September. Sand blackberry, R. cuneifolius. July to August. Dwarf bilberry, Vaccinium cespitosum. August. Great bilberry, V. uliginosum, July to August. Oval-leaved bilberry, V. ovifolium, July to August. Thin-leaved bilberry, V. membranaceum, July to August. Black blueberry, V. atricoccum, July to August. Canada blueberry, V. canadense, July to August. Dwarf blueberry, V. pennsylvanicum, June to July. High bush blueberry, V. corymbosum, July to August. Low blueberry, V. vacillans, July to August. Low black blueberry, V. nigrum, July. Mountain blueberry, V. pallidum, July to August. Southern black huckleberry, V. virgatum, July. Mountain cranberry, wineberry, V. vitis idea, August to September. Black huckleberry, Galisacea resinosa, July to August. Box huckleberry, G. brachycera. Dwarf huckleberry, G. dumosa, July to August. Tangleberry, G. frondosa, July to August. Appalachian cherry, Prunus cuneata. Choke cherry, P. virginiana, July to August. Edible later. Sand cherry, P. pumila, August. Sour cherry, egriot, P. cerasus, June to July. Naturalized. Western wild cherry, P. demissa, August. Western sand cherry, P. bessii. Wild cherry, crab cherry, P. avium, naturalized. Wild black cherry, P. serratina, August to September. Wild red cherry, P. pennsylvanica, August. American crab apple, sweet scented, C. Malus coronaria, September to October. Narrow-leaved crabapple, M. angustifolia. Soulard crabapple, M. soulardi. Western crabapple, M. ionensis. American cranberry, Oxycoccus macrocarpus, September to October. Small cranberry, bog C. O. oxycoccus, August to September. Southern mountain cranberry, O. erythrocarpus, July to September. Cranberry tree, Viburnum opulus, August to September. Crowberry, curlewberry, Empetrum nigrum, summer. Golden currant, buffalo or Missouri currant, Ribes aureum. Northern black currant, R. hudsonianum. Red currant, R. rubrum. Wild black currant, R. floridum, July to August. Elderberry, Sambucus canadensis, August. Wild gooseberry, dogberry, Ribes cynospati, August. Missouri gooseberry, R. gracile. Northern gooseberry, R. oxyacanthoides, July to August. Round-leaved gooseberry, R. rotundifolium, July to August. Swamp gooseberry, R. lacustra, July to August. Bailey's grape, Vitis baileyana. Blue grape, winter grape, V. bicolor. Downy grape, V. cinerea. Frost grape, B. cordifolia, October to November. Missouri grape, V. palmata, October. Northern fox grape, V. labrusca, August to September. Riverside grape, sweet scented grape, V. vulpina, July to October. Sand grape, sugar grape, V. rupustris, August. Southern fox grape, V. rotundifolia, August to September. Summer grape, V. estivus, September to October. Ground cherry, Physalis, several species. Hackberry, Celtis occidentalis, September to October. Berries dry but edible. Black haw, Viburnum prunifolium, September to October. Scarlet haw, red haw, Crataegus mollis, September to October. May apple, mandrake, Podophyllum peltatum, July. Passion flower, Passiflora incarnata, also P. lutea, fruit known as maypops. Pawpaw, Asamina triloba, fruit edible when frost-bitten. Persimmon, Diosporus virginiana, fruit edible after frost. Beach plum, Prunus maritima, September to October. Canada plum, P. nigra, August. Chickasaw plum, P. augustifolia, May to July. Low plum, P. gracilis. Porter's plum, P. alleghaniensis, August. Watson's plum, P. watsoni. Wild goose plum, P. hortulanum, September to October. Wild red plum, yellow plum, P. americana, August to October. Ground plum, Astragalus crassicarpus, also A. mexicanus. Unripe fruit resembles green plums and is eaten raw or cooked. Black raspberry, thimbleberry, Rubus occidentalis, July. Cloudberry, Rubus chemimorus. Dwarf raspberry, R. americanus, July to August. Purple wild raspberry, R. neglectus, July to August. Purple flowering raspberry, R. odoratus, July to September. Salmonberry, R. parvifolius, July to September. Wild red raspberry, R. strigosus, July to September. Serviceberry, Juneberry, Amelanchier canadensis, June to July. Low Juneberry, A. spicata. Northwestern Juneberry, A. alnifolia. Round-leaved Juneberry, A. rotundifolia, August. Shadbush, A. botryapium, June to July. Silverberry, Elaginus argentea, July to August. Creeping snowberry, Chiogenes hispidula, August to September. Berries have flavor of sweet birch. American wood strawberry, Fragaria americana. Northern wild strawberry, F. canadensis. Virginia strawberry, Scarlet S. F. virginiana. Blackthorn, pearhaw. Crataegus tomentosa, October. Large fruited thorn, C. punctata, September to October. Scarlet thorn, C. coccinea, September to October. Miscellaneous. All substitutes for coffee are unsatisfying. In the South, during the Civil War, many pitiful expedients were tried, such as parched meal, dried sweet potatoes, wheat, chicory, cottonseed, persimmon seed, dandelion seeds, and the seeds of the Kentucky coffee tree; but the best were found to be rye, the seeds of the coffee senna (Cassia occidentalis), called "Magdad coffee," and the parched and ground seeds of okra. None of our wild plants contain principles that act upon the nerves like caffeine or thein. Teas, so called, of very good flavour can be made from the dried root bark of sassafras, or from its early buds, from the bark and leaves of spicewood, from the leaves of chicory, ginseng, and the sweet goldenrod (Solidago odora), and cinquefoil. Other plants used for the purpose are Labrador tea, Oswego tea, and (inferior), New Jersey tea. Our pioneers also made decoctions of chips of the arbor vitae (white cedar), the dried leaves of black birch, and the tips of hemlock boughs, sweetening them with maple sugar. The list of medicinal teas is unending. Agreeable summer teas can be made by infusing the sour fruit of the mountain ash (Pyrus americana), from sumac berries (dwarf and staghorn), and from the fruit of the red mulberry. The sweet sap of both hard and soft maples, box elder, and the birches (except red birch), is potable. Small beer can be made from the sap of black birch, from the pulp of honey locust pods, the fruit of the persimmon, the shoots and root bark of sassafras, and the twigs of black and red spruce. Cider has been made from the fruit of crab apples and service berries. Sugar or syrup is made by boiling down the sap, not only of sugar maple, but of red and silver maples, box elder, the birches, butternut, and hickory, and from honey locust pods. Vinegar can also be made from these saps, as well as from fruit juices, by diluting with water and adding a little yeast. The very sour berries of sumac turn cider into vinegar, or they may be used alone. In extremis. The far north is famine land the world over, and to it we must look for examples of what men can subsist on when driven to the last extremity. In all northern countries, within the tree limit, it is customary in starving times to mix with the scanty hoard of flour the ground bark of trees. It is possible to support life even with bark alone. The Jesuit missionary Nicolet reported more than 2 centuries ago that an acquaintance of his, a French Indian agent, lived 7 weeks on bark alone, and the Relations of the order in Canada contain many instances of a like expedient. Those were hard times in New France. Such an experience as this was dismissed with a single sentence, quite as a matter of course. "An eel skin was deemed a sumptuous supper. I had used one for mending a robe, but hunger obliged me to unstitch and eat it." Another brother says, "The bark of the oak, birch, linden, and that of other trees, when well cooked and pounded, and then put into water in which fish has been boiled, or else mixed with fish oil, made some excellent stews." Again, "They (the Indians) dried by a fire the bark of green oak. Then they pounded it and made it into porridge." It seems that the human stomach can stand a lot of tannin, if it has to do so. The young shoots of spruce and tamarack, the inner bark in spring of pine, spruce, and hemlock, young leaf stems of beech, hickory, and other trees, and wild rosebuds are nutritious. But these can be had only, of course, in spring. Far better than oak bark are the inner barks of alder, quaking aspen, basswood, birch, sweet bay, cottonwood, slippery elm (this especially is nutritious), white elm, pignut hickory, white locust, striped maple, and sassafras. The Chippewas boil the thick, sweetish bark of the shrubby bittersweet or staff tree (Celastrus scandens), and use it for food. The following entry in the diary of Sir John Franklin sounds naive, when stripped of its context, but there is a world of grim pathos back of it. "There was no tripe de roche, so we drank tea and ate some of our shoes for supper." The rock tripe, here referred to (Umbilicaria arctica or Dilloni), is one of several edible lichens that grow on rocks and are extensively used as human food in lands beyond the Arctic tree limit. Reindeer moss (Cladonia rangiferina), and the well-known Iceland moss (Citraris icelandica), are other examples. These are starchy, and after being boiled for 2 or 3 hours, form a gelatinous mass that is digestible, although repulsive in appearance, one of the early Jesuits likening it to the slime of snails, another admitting that "it is necessary to close one's eyes to eat it." It is pleasanter to turn now to the wild condiments that our fields and forests afford. Sassafras, oil of birch, wintergreen, peppermint, and spearmint will occur to everyone. Balm, sweet marjoram, summer savory, and tansy are sometimes found in wild places where they have escaped from cultivation. The rootstock of sweet cicely has a spicy taste, with a strong odor of anise, and is edible. Sweet gale gives a pleasant flavor to soups and dressings. The seeds of tansy mustard were once used by the Indians in flavoring dishes. Wild garlic, wild onions, peppergrass, snowberry, and spicewood may also be used for similar purposes. End of Part II of Chapter 17.